Hey there, I wanted to come at you again this week with some more information about playing chords and with a couple of chords that go with the chord we learned last time, which was our G major chord. Just to review just a quick little bit here, we talked about our G major chord, which is our third fret on our bottom string, our second fret on our fifth string, two open strings, ring finger on the third fret of the second string, and pinky on the third fret of the top string. Should sound something like that if you're playing it right, okay? Couple of things to remember and how we went over it. We talked about how we're learning this chord in partials. We're learning the top part with the top two fingers. I'm playing the top four strings. Okay? And we talked about how we're learning the bottom part as a partial as well. Playing the bottom four strings. The things to watch out for when you're playing this chord, just a reminder, is your pinky is always going to be right up against that fret on the top string. Your ring finger is going to be slightly behind it, and to compensate for that, we got to make sure we squeeze down really hard with that ring finger, and that takes a little extra oomph on your left hand, okay? So getting those two fingers down really good first. Once you get that, then we can start adding in other fingers, okay? Going down to the bottom part of this, we have our middle finger kind of slightly hanging off the half of the guitar here, or halfway off the guitar here, so it can play that bottom string, but it's also not interfering with the next string above that, the fifth string that you're playing with your index finger, because we have to watch out for the underside of this middle finger touching that top that string above it right there on the fifth string. Okay, once you feel like you can get the whole chord, then it's time to move on to the next step of what we're doing with this G chord. The next step is one of the most important lessons I ever learned when it came to learning chords, and that is to learn how to grab your chords. For the most part right now, most of us are probably putting one finger down or maybe two fingers down at a time on the fretboard. Well, once you get that initial learning out of the way, it's important to try to start grabbing this chord and putting all four fingers down at the same time. That's four separate targets, 8 targets if you want to think about where you have to place it on your finger as well. So you're having to land on the right spot on the fret, on the right spot of your finger. So that's 8 separate targets that you're hitting at the same time. A lot to think about right there, okay? So what I like to do is I like to make the chord, and then I like to take my fingers and lightly lift them up so that they're still touching the strings, and then press them back down, and then check it again. Okay? Repeating this process over and over again, you can kind of slightly hear pressing down on those strings right there. Sitting there pulsing this is what I call it. Pulsing your grab of your chord here over and over again. It's what's going to train that subconscious mind, your muscle memory, if you will, to grab that chord. Because when we're playing a song, we're going to play. And you're grabbing that chord every time. You're not going. Let's see. Where am I going to put my fingers in? And going like that. Now, at first, it may look a little bit like that, but if you practice by grabbing the chords, eventually what I want you to do is we're going to switch chords, which is what we're going to talk about today in a lesson. And you're going to be able to move the chords in time, slowly at first, to change to a new chord, okay? We're going to change to a new chord here, going from our G chord, a chord that pairs well with our G major chord. So here's our G major chord again. And what we're going to do is we're just going to move 1.5 fingers, I'm going to say. I'm going to say a half finger because one of them isn't actually moving off the fret. It's just changing a little bit and scooting down on the fret, okay? So we have this right here. We have this shape. We're going to take our index finger and we're going to slightly, I say, move it down this way towards the tuning pegs, about a millimeter or two. And when we move that down, what we're moving that down for is to move enough so that our middle finger can come and play underneath that index finger. So right here. Okay, so we're moving this finger down so that this finger can come underneath it, okay? So now our new chord, which is what we call an E minor 7, is made, okay? When we play our E minor 7, the couple of things we got to watch out for are, first of all, we move this index finger down a little bit to where it's not right behind the fret. And because of that, we have to make sure we squeeze down extra hard to make sure it stays and it plays the way we want it to, okay? So squeezing down extra hard with our index finger. Our middle finger is going to be playing right here on the 2nd fret of the 4th string. And the thing we got to watch out for that is so that the under part of that middle finger, just like we watched out for on the G chord, doesn't block the 3rd string, our G note, our open G, from ringing, okay? Okay, so when you're making this chord, trying to get it so that you have that index finger squeezing down hard enough, that middle finger not playing so that it's touching the 3rd string right there, and then the top 2 fingers are doing exactly what they were doing on the G, so there's no difference in that right there, okay? So when you're practicing this chord, the main way you want to practice it is maybe practicing just these first 2 fingers first of all, and trying to get those so that you can get that chord. Now this is a chord by itself as well, but I want to teach the E minor 7, not just the plain E minor. This is an E minor chord right here. Okay, and that is a full chord right there. But I want to teach the E minor 7 because it goes with a lot of other songs that we're going to learn eventually with this. Okay, so E minor 7 right there. Let me open the door for just a quick second and let my dog in. Barking up a storm out here. Come on in. Okay, so we've got our E minor 7 right here. And the way we may want to practice this, like I said before, is just with the bottom partial right here. And that's actually a full chord, so you're actually learning a couple of different chords with learning this chord. And then practicing the top partial right here. Kind of like you did on the G, okay? Once you feel confident enough that you've got both these partials down pretty good, you can put them all together, and it's going to take a lot of hand strength to hold it down. And then you've got what you need to play your E minor 7 chord. And just so you know what that usually looks like when you're looking at a chord chart, it looks like E, lowercase m, and then the number 7 is on there. Okay, this E minor 7 can be substituted for a regular E minor in a lot of cases, not every case, but in a lot of cases it works just as well, and it sounds good, and it just adds a little bit of flair to what you're playing. Okay. Okay, so with that being said, we've got 2 chords now. Now that we have 2 chords, we can practice switching between these 2 chords. So what I want to do is I want to go back to our G major. And what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to move just my bottom 2 fingers, my middle finger and my index finger, to that new E minor 7 chord. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to arpeggiate the first one, G chord. And then I'm going to move kind of in slow motion. I'm going to move my fingers very slowly. And I'm not going to put them down until I feel like they're exactly where they need to be. Okay, and then I'm going to put them down. I'm going to check it. Made it the first time. Now you might not make it the first time, so here's what it could sound like for you. You're doing it, you're going for your G, everything sounds good, and then you get to your E minor 7 and you play it and you get a sound like that. Okay, a couple of things you could be doing. Squeezing down hard enough is probably number 1 when you're playing a 4-finger chord like this, making sure you're squeezing down hard enough. Making sure that your fingers are in the right spot, as close to that fret as possible. Of course, your index finger won't be right behind it, so you have to squeeze down a little harder. And then making sure that middle finger is out of the way for that G note right there, so it's not blocking that string. I like that, okay? So going back and forth and just going G, E minor 7, back to G, E minor 7. And just back and forth right there. You can do this for literally as long as you want to. It's one of those things that's going to get better the more you do it. So I encourage you to do this back and forth a lot. Eventually you'll be just grabbing the chord and strumming the whole chord. But that'll come with time. That won't be an immediate thing for most of us, okay? Okay, I want to show you one more chord that goes with this G chord as well. This one may be a little easier to move because what we're going to do is we're going to move from our G to our C add 9 chord. C add 9. And C add 9 is kind of like the E minor 7. It can be substituted for a regular C in a lot of cases. Not every case, but in a lot of cases it'll work as well. Okay, so going back to our regular G here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move these two fingers up, which is actually down towards the floor, so that I'm playing this right here. Now, this looks a lot like a G chord, except we're just moved up a pair of strings right here. Now, there's a couple of things going on here, though, that we need to talk about before we jump right into this chord. The number one thing, we talked about how our middle finger on the G is hanging halfway off the fretboard to kind of make enough room so that the underside of that finger doesn't accidentally touch the next string. So what we're doing here is actually doing something a little bit opposite of that, sort of. We're actually going to be touching the bottom string with the tip of our middle finger here. Touching the bottom string with the tip of our middle finger. And that is so that we're making that muted sound right there. We actually want that sound for a change. And the reason why is because when we're playing a song and we're busy jumping chords, we want to be able to block that bottom string from ringing so we don't have to think as much with our strumming over here. We can just strum all the strings and get a pretty good sound without having to go in and cut in at a certain point and just hit certain strings. So you're able to do this without thinking about it as much because of what you're doing with your left hand here. Okay, so your middle finger is touching that bottom string, and it's also playing the 3rd fret on your A string, your next to bottom string right there. Okay, so you got, okay, and then with the next finger, of course, doing like it normally does, index finger right here, making sure you're squeezing down hard enough that you're not blocking anything with the middle finger, underside of the middle finger that is, and you're playing a good clear sound. Okay, so when you're playing this chord and practicing this chord, I would actually go ahead and arpeggiate all 6 strings, even though there's only 5 different notes in here, just to make sure everything's ringing the way it needs to. Now, just like the other chords, you can break this into partials and play the top partial, which you should be getting pretty good at that by now after doing a couple of chords with that. There you go, and squeezing it down hard enough the first time. Getting a good clear sound. And then doing just the bottom partial. But when you do the bottom partial, make sure you're playing and muting that bottom string. Getting that clear sound, okay? Same thing I want you to do on this chord like you did on the others. Pulse it. Squeeze it. Come in and check it every once in a while with your right hand. Making a good sound. That's what we want right there, okay? So, what I want you to try to do with these 3 chords is I want you to try to practice grabbing each of these chords individually, first of all. So getting through the partial exercises, getting up to the point later in the week perhaps where you're playing the full chord. And then going down and changing between every chord that you've done so far, okay? So just slowly in slow motion, like I say, moving and changing from your G chord to your E minor 7 chord to your C add 9 chord, and maybe even mixing it up and going from C add 9 to E minor 7, C add 9 to G, coming at it from every possible angle that you could be presented with in a song, where you change from this chord first to this chord second, so on and so forth. So there's only so many combinations there with 3 chords, but I want you to think of as many as you can and try to practice playing them that way in context. So Biggest thing to remember with this lesson is grabbing your chords. Once you get it comfortable that you're playing it and it sounds clear every time that you touch it, you strum it, you pick it, arpeggiate it, then grabbing that chord, okay? If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments. Thank you so much.